Let me tell you something real. Excuses don't show up looking like weakness. They show up dressed like logic. They sound reasonable. They make sense. They even feel responsible. And that's why they're so dangerous. Because the moment you start explaining why you couldn't do it, why the timing wasn't right, why the odds were stacked against you, you step into a comfort zone that slowly, quietly keeps you average. Not failing, not crashing, just stuck, and being stuck is far more deadly than falling, because at least when you fall, you know you need to get back up. See, excuses don't always stop you from moving. They stop you from moving forward. You're busy, you're tired, you've been through a lot, people don't support you, the system is unfair, and listen, some of those things are true. But truth without action doesn't change your life. You can be right and still be broke. You can be justified and still be behind. Excuses give you emotional relief without delivering real progress, and over time, that relief becomes addictive. Average feels safe. Average doesn't demand more from you. Average lets you sleep in, skip the work, delay the dream, and still feel okay about it. Average says tomorrow. Average says when things calm down. Average says I'll start when I'm ready. But readiness is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid discomfort. Growth doesn't happen when you're comfortable. It happens when you're stretched, challenged, and pushed beyond what feels familiar, and the hardest part, excuses protect your ego. They keep you from facing the one thing that can actually set you free: accountability. Because the moment you stop making excuses, you have to look at your habits, your discipline, your consistency, your effort. It's easier to blame circumstances than to confront your standards. It's easier to explain than to execute. But success doesn't respond to explanations. It responds to commitment. I've seen people with fewer resources, less support, and heavier obstacles win, not because life was fair, but because they refused to let excuses become their identity. They decided that discomfort was a small price to pay for growth. They understood that staying average costs more in the long run than struggling in the short term. Every excuse you accept today becomes a limitation you live with tomorrow. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Excuses don't remove the pain, they postpone it. You either pay the price of discipline now, or you pay the price of regret later, and regret is far heavier. Regret shows up years down the road asking, what if you had tried harder? What if you had stopped explaining and started executing? And by then, the cost is much higher. The moment you step out of that comfort zone, it won't feel good. You'll doubt yourself, you'll feel exposed, you'll feel like you're failing at first, but that's the sound of growth. That's what progress feels like before it looks like success. Don't confuse discomfort with defeat. Discomfort is often the doorway to everything you've been praying for. So if you're tired of being average, stop negotiating with your excuses. Stop protecting the habits that are holding you back. Stop choosing comfort over courage. Because the life you want is on the other side of the excuses you keep making. And the day you finally let them go is the day you stop surviving and start becoming unstoppable. Let's get something clear right now. The world does not owe you understanding. It doesn't owe you sympathy, patience, or applause for trying. And once you accept that, you become dangerous. Because when you stop expecting people to understand your struggle, you stop wasting energy explaining it. You realize something powerful. Results speak louder than any story you could ever tell. We live in a time where everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants validation. Everybody wants someone to say, I get it. But success doesn't move because someone understands you. Bills don't get paid because your life was hard. Opportunities don't open because your intentions were good. The marketplace, the industry, the world, it responds to one thing and one thing only: performance. You don't get rewarded for what you've been through. You get rewarded for what you produce. And let me be honest, explaining feels good. It gives you a sense of relief. It makes you feel like you're doing something, even when you're not. You explain why you're late. You explain why it didn't work. You explain why this season has been tough. But every explanation becomes a substitute for execution. While you're talking, someone else is working. while you're justifying someone else's building. And when results show up, nobody asks for the backstory. They just respect the outcome. The truth is, when you have results, people stop asking questions. They stop doubting you, they stop overlooking you. Not because they suddenly became nicer, but because results remove debate. Results don't argue, results don't beg, results don't need to be defended. They stand on their own, and the moment you decide to let your work speak instead of your words, your life shifts into a higher gear. See, expecting understanding keeps you dependent. It puts your confidence in other people's hands. You're waiting for approval, waiting for recognition, waiting for someone to finally see how hard you're trying. But when you commit to results, you become self-driven. You wake up knowing your job isn't to be understood. It's to be undeniable. You don't need applause when progress is happening. You don't need validation when momentum is building. And don't get it twisted. This doesn't mean your struggle isn't real. It doesn't mean your pain doesn't matter. It means you refuse to let your pain become your excuse. It means you stop telling your story as a reason you can't win and start using it as fuel to prove that you will. The strongest people don't talk the most about what they've been through. They show you what they've built despite it. When you stop explaining, you free up time, focus, and energy. That energy goes into discipline, into consistency, into sharpening your skills, into showing up again and again when nobody's watching. And over time, something beautiful happens. Your results start introducing you in rooms you've never been in. Your work starts opening doors your words never could. So let them misunderstand you. Let them doubt you. Let them question your path. You don't need to convince them. You need to outgrow the version of you that needed their approval in the first place. Because in the end, excuses make noise, explanations fade, but results echo. And when your results show up, they speak for you long after you've stopped talking. Let me say this straight. Your situation is not the problem. It feels like it is. It looks like it is. And for a long time, it might have been the thing you pointed to every time life didn't go your way. But if your situation was the real problem, nobody would ever rise above anything. Yet every day, people come from worse circumstances, fewer resources, and heavier pressure, and still win. The difference is not what happened to them. The difference is how they responded. Life is going to hit you. That part is guaranteed. Disappointment, rejection, loss, delay. None of that requires permission to show up. What does require a decision is whether you allow those moments to define you or develop you. Most people spend their lives reacting instead of responding. They let emotions make decisions. They let pain choose their pace. They let fear determine their limits. And before they know it, the situation they blamed becomes the excuse they live by. Here's the hard truth. Blaming your situation gives it power. The moment you say, "If this were different, I'd be better," you hand control over your future to something outside of you. But when you change your response, you take that power back. You realize you can't always control what happens, but you can control your discipline, your effort, and your attitude when it does. That's where growth lies. Some people let pressure break them. Others let pressure build them. Same weight, same circumstances, different response, and that response shows up in the habits you keep when nobody is watching. Do you quit when it gets uncomfortable, or do you get creative? Do you complain when it's hard, or do you commit even harder? Do you wait for conditions to improve, or do you improve yourself regardless of the conditions? See, adversity is a mirror. It doesn't create weakness. It reveals it, and that can be uncomfortable to accept. It's easier to say the system is against you than to admit you've been inconsistent. It's easier to blame the timing than to admit you haven't been disciplined. But the moment you take responsibility, even for things that weren't your fault, your life starts to move. Responsibility isn't blame, it's ownership, and ownership is freedom. When you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" your mindset shifts. You stop seeing obstacles as stop signs and start seeing them as training grounds. Every setback becomes a setup for strength. Every delay becomes a lesson in patience. Every loss becomes proof that you survived. And survival builds confidence. And don't misunderstand me. This doesn't mean pretending everything is okay. It means deciding that no matter how bad it gets, you won't let it make you bitter, lazy, or small. You refuse to let your circumstances write your character. You choose growth over comfort, responsibility over excuses, progress over pity. So, if you're waiting for the situation to change, stop waiting. Change your response. Show up differently, work differently, think differently. Because the moment you stop blaming where you are and start taking ownership of where you're going, everything shifts. And that's when you realize the problem was never the situation. It was the response you were settling for. And today is the day you choose a better one. Most people don't realize this, but making excuses is exhausting. It doesn't look exhausting because it happens in your head. It sounds like thinking. It feels like reasoning. But every excuse you create takes energy. Every justification you rehearse drains focus. Every story you tell yourself about why you can't do something steals the same mental strength that discipline needs to grow. That's why so many people feel tired before they even start. They've already spent their energy talking themselves out of the work. Think about it. It takes effort to explain why you missed the workout. It takes effort to convince yourself you'll start tomorrow. It takes effort to replay the reasons why this season is different, why this time doesn't count, why you deserve a break. Excuses are not passive, they are active. They require creativity, memory, and emotional investment. You have to build a case in your mind to stay comfortable, and while you're building that case, discipline is starving, discipline is quiet. It doesn't argue. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't ask how you feel. It simply says, do the work. But when excuses are loud, discipline can't be heard. The more you entertain excuses, the weaker your discipline becomes. Not because discipline disappeared, but because you redirected its fuel. The same focus that could have gone into showing up went into backing out. And here's the dangerous part. Excuses feel productive. You feel like you've thought it through. You feel like you've made a responsible decision. But nothing changed. No progress was made. No ground was gained. Energy was spent, but nothing was built. That's why people stay busy but stuck. They're mentally active but physically inactive. Emotionally invested but behaviorally unchanged. Successful people don't have more energy. They manage it better. They don't waste it on internal debates. They don't spend hours negotiating with themselves. They make decisions early and stick to them. When it's time to work, they work. When it's time to rest, they rest. But they don't confuse rest with retreat. They understand that every excuse they eliminate creates space for discipline to grow stronger. The moment you stop explaining why you can't, discipline has room to breathe. Suddenly, you're not as tired as you thought. Suddenly, you find time you didn't think you had. Suddenly, the task that felt impossible becomes manageable. Not because it got easier, but because your energy stopped leaking. Excuses also keep you emotionally drained. Guilt, frustration, self-doubt, all of it comes from knowing you could have done more. Discipline, on the other hand, creates confidence. Even when results take time, discipline gives you peace. You can rest knowing you showed up. You can sleep knowing you didn't quit on yourself. That emotional stability becomes momentum. Here's the shift. Stop asking, do I feel like it? Start asking, what does this require? Feelings change. Requirements don't. The moment you make that shift, discipline stops being a struggle and starts becoming a standard. And standards don't need motivation. They need commitment. So the next time you feel drained, don't assume it's because the work is too hard. Ask yourself where your energy is going. Is it going into excuses or is it going into execution? Because you don't need more motivation. You need to stop spending your discipline on explanations. And when you redirect that energy into action, you'll discover that the power you've been looking for was never missing. You were just wasting it, and today is the day you take it back. Let's kill the biggest lie holding people back right now, the idea that you need to feel ready before you move. That myth has cost more dreams than failure ever did. Successful people don't wait until they feel confident, rested, or fully prepared. They move while they're tired. They move while they're scared. They move while they're still figuring it out. Not because it's easy, but because they understand something most people don't. Progress doesn't respond to comfort, it responds to courage. Everybody wants the perfect moment. More time, more money, more clarity, more confidence, but perfection is just fear wearing a nice suit. It's an excuse that sounds responsible, but its real job is to keep you from risking rejection, embarrassment, or failure. The truth is, readiness doesn't come before action. It comes because of action. Confidence is built in motion, not in waiting. You're going to be tired. That's life. You've got responsibilities, pressure, and days that drain you. But tired doesn't mean done. Tired means human, and if you only move when you feel energized, you'll spend most of your life standing still. The people who win learn how to operate without perfect conditions. They learn how to show up on low energy and still give high effort. That's not talent. That's discipline and fear. Fear never disappears. It just changes shape. If you wait for fear to leave, you'll be waiting forever. The difference is that successful people don't let fear drive. They let it ride in the back seat. They feel the nerves, the doubt, the uncertainty, and they move anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision that fear doesn't get to make the rules. Being unprepared is part of growth. If you always feel ready, you're probably playing too small. Growth demands that you step into rooms where you don't know everything, where you have to learn on the fly, where mistakes are possible. That discomfort is not a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're expanding. You don't rise to the level of your confidence. You rise to the level of your commitment. Most people miss opportunities not because they weren't capable, but because they were waiting to feel capable. They thought they needed one more course, one more sign, one more push. Meanwhile, someone else with half the skill but twice the courage took the shot. And that's how life works. Momentum favors the brave, not the perfect. Here's what separates winners. They understand that action creates clarity. You don't think your way into a better life. You work your way into it. Every step you take sharpens you. Every rep builds strength. Every attempt, even the messy ones, moves you forward. Waiting keeps you stuck. Moving, even imperfectly, creates growth. So stop asking yourself if you're ready. Ask yourself if you're willing to move tired, willing to move scared, willing to move without guarantees. Because the moment you stop waiting for perfect conditions and start moving with imperfect courage is the moment your life stops being delayed and starts being built. And that decision right now is the difference between watching success and becoming it. There's a moment in every person's life that changes everything, not because the world shifts, not because conditions improve, but because a decision is made. It's the day you stop making excuses, not someday. Not when life gets easier, the day you draw the line and say no more. That's the day your life accelerates, because energy that was once tied up in explanations finally gets released into execution. Excuses slow you down because they keep you stuck in analysis, justification, and delay. You replay the same stories, the same reasons, the same what-ifs. And while nothing is moving on the outside, everything is draining on the inside. But the moment excuses end, clarity shows up, decisions become simpler, you stop negotiating with yourself and start moving with purpose. Momentum doesn't need perfection, it needs commitment. When excuses are gone, focus sharpens. You wake up knowing exactly what you need to do because there's no debate anymore, no arguing, no convincing, just action. That's why progress feels faster. Not because the road is shorter, but because you stopped stopping. You don't waste hours explaining why today isn't the day. You make today the day. Acceleration also comes from ownership. When you stop making excuses, you stop blaming people, timing, circumstances, and luck. You take full responsibility, not for everything that happened, but for everything that happens next. And responsibility is powerful. It puts you back in control. It reminds you that while you can't rewrite the past, you can absolutely rewrite your habits, your standards, and your future. You start to notice changes quickly. You show up more consistently. You push through discomfort instead of running from it. You make decisions faster and recover from mistakes quicker. Even setbacks don't hit the same because you're no longer looking for someone or something to blame. You adjust, you learn, and you move forward. That's acceleration, and here's the part people don't talk about. When excuses leave, confidence grows, real confidence, not the loud kind, not the fake kind, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you kept your word to yourself. Every time you choose action over excuse, you strengthen trust in yourself, that self. Trust becomes momentum. Momentum becomes belief. Belief becomes results. Your environment may not change overnight. People may still doubt you. The process may still be hard, but you'll move differently. You'll think differently. You'll respond differently. And over time, those small shifts create massive separation between who you were and who you're becoming. Excuses keep you busy explaining. Discipline keeps you busy building. And once you experience what it feels like to build consistently, excuses start to feel expensive. You realize they cost you time, energy, opportunities, and years you'll never get back. That realization alone is enough to change how you move. So understand this acceleration doesn't come from luck, talent, or perfect timing. It comes from a decision to stop tolerating the habits that hold you back. The moment you stop making excuses, your life doesn't just improve, it speeds up. And when you finally commit to that level of ownership, nothing can keep up with you anymore, because the version of you that made excuses is gone, and the version of you that takes action has taken over. At the end of the day, success isn't a mystery, and it isn't reserved for a special group of people. It's built by those who are willing to stop lying to themselves, stop waiting for permission, and stop hiding behind excuses that feel comfortable but cost them everything. You've heard the truth today. Excuses keep you average. Explanations don't move the world. Situations don't define you. Your response does. Discipline grows when excuses die. Progress begins when action replaces fear. And acceleration happens the moment you take full ownership of your life. Nothing changes until you decide that comfort is no longer acceptable and average is no longer an option. The moment you stop making excuses, you gain clarity, you gain focus, you gain momentum, and momentum, once it starts, is hard to stop. You don't need more time, more support, or more understanding. You need a higher standard for yourself. So walk away from this with one decision. No more excuses. Show up tired, show up scared, show up imperfect, but show up. Because the life you want is waiting on the other side of the excuses you've been protecting. And the moment you let them go is the moment you finally step into the success you've been capable of all along.